Okay, we're going to look at how to show directed numbers on a number line. So in my first example here, I want to represent where x is greater than 2. Alright, I'm going to put a small dot where x is equal to 2 on the number line. So just here, x is equal to 2. We don't want x being equal to 2. We want where x is greater than 2. So, for example, the number 5 is greater than 2. So is the number 8. So is the number 10. So is the number 2.5, in fact. So everything to the right of that dot is greater than 2. So how I would represent x being greater than 2, I would draw a line to the right of 2. Everything there is greater than 2. I wouldn't include 2 because it doesn't want where x is equal to 2, it just wants where x is greater than 2. So I draw an open circle at 2 to show that I want everything above 2 but not including 2. Let's look at our next example. It wants everything where x is greater than or equal to 4. This is where x is equal to 4. So for my circle, I'm going to colour it in because this is where x is greater than, and this line here where it means it's equal to 4. So it wants us to include 4, and again we'll go to the right because everything to the right is greater than 4. Our next example, it wants us to represent where x is less than -3, not equal to -3, but less than -3. So there's my -3. I'm not going to colour it in because it doesn't want me to include -3, but it wants everything that's less than -3. So it wants everything down that way. The last example for this little section here is where x is less than or equal to -5. So here's -5. I'll colour the circle in because it also wants where x is equal to -5. And it wants everything that is less than -5 as well. So basically we colour the circle in if it's equal to the number, and if it's greater than, so if we're wanting where x is greater than the number, we do an arrow everything up to the right, and where x is less than the number, our arrow goes down to the left. Okay. Similar thing here, except our numbers are not whole numbers. So in this first example, it wants where x is greater than -2.5, not equal to, but greater than -2.5. -2.5 is between -2 and -3, so in there. Sorry, and that shouldn't be coloured in. I'll just erase that. It wants, so going over again, -2.5, but not including the 2.5, -2.5. So -2.5's in there, not coloured in. It's between the -2 and the -3. And it wants all the numbers greater than -2.5. So all the numbers up this way. That's how we'd represent that. This next one, it wants us to represent where x is less than or equal to 1 3/4. So 1 3/4 is between 1 and 2, closer to 2. About there. We colour it in because it wants us to include where x is equal to 1 3/4. It wants x is equal to 1 3/4 and all represent where x is less than 1 3/4. So all the numbers down there are less than 1 3/4. Okay, one more. This last one, a little bit harder. I like to think of it as you're doing two sums in one. So I'm going to do this half first, where x is less than or equal to 3.4. And I'm going to represent that in red. So x being equal to 3.4 is about there. It wants us to include the 3.4, so we do colour the 3.4 in. And let's show all the numbers that are less than 3.4. So in other words, it wants us to do all of that. That's the first half. The second half, it wants us to show here where x is greater than -2 and a third. So I find -2 and a third between -2 and -3, closer to -2. It's not equal to. Alright, so we don't colour the circle in. So it's there, -2 and a third, and it wants where x is greater than -2 and a third. So the line goes up that way. This question is wanting us to show where both are true, where x is less than or equal to 3.4 and where x is greater than or equal to greater than, not equal to, -2 and a third. So it wants us to where both of those are true. So in other words, the reason I've color coded it, the answer is wherever there is red and blue overlapping. So in other words, it wants from here down to and not including there. That's our answer. So that's meant to be a straight line. That's our answer because that in that area x is both, it is both less than or equal to 3.4 and greater than -2 and a third. So this is like doing two questions in one, like I did. Do the first bit in one colour, the second bit in a second colour, and the answer is where those two overlap.